So, this podcast for me is about deepening my connection with not only myself, but opening up to others in a community style. A lot of my awakening journey has been, it felt very closed, it felt very alone. And I was kind of breaking through these paradigms of what I thought that connection meant, which was really this very closed down, independent version of being. And so for me, this is pushing outside of my comfort zone with someone who is on a similar, has come through, we'll cut that, is on a journey that has brought them to a similar realization, to this place of service, how we can share with the world what we've been through. Because what I want to do is give my experience in a way that allows you to see that you're not alone with whatever you're feeling, with whatever you're experiencing. That's what we're here for. We're here to connect and to understand each other and ourselves on a deeper level. So through this podcast, I do hope that we find a much deeper connection, getting our message out, really from a place of service and heart.
So I'd like to welcome you to this podcast. So this is an idea that's been inspired between Beka and I to really invite you to deeply connect to who you are, to open yourselves up, and to really savor and enjoy the journey of your humanity. Now, both of us have been on quite intense journeys and ordeals ourselves to get to this place. And the natural next step, as you start to realize and pass through the difficult passages of your life, is to want to pay it forwards or give it back to others, to open space. Recognizing that we're not alone in this, that this is a human journey. Especially at these times, it feels even more important we start sharing our wisdom and insights and encouragement as we step into this new future together. Personally, I feel that we've transcended the space of egoic reality, which is all about me and mine, and what's come into the space is community, global community, a human species. So there's this transcendence of name, personality, culture, creed, and connecting at a much deeper level, an essential level. And this podcast, what I'd like to offer and invite you into is also finding that place of deep human connection inside yourself, where we really get into intimate relationship with each other in terms of joy, expression, creativity, dealing with the difficult times, grief, sadness, loss, pain, but being in it together. So we're here to inspire, to encourage, to provoke insight and inquiry, and it's a great pleasure to offer and open this space. So thank you very much for being here. We'd like to give you some context about what to expect in the flow as we present this. So we're going to start with a little introduction of the theme, which is about awakening. And then we're going to get into a dialogue. We're going to share some of our stories and to look at how we translated that into our lives. And the purpose and intention of this is to support you in finding relatability, resonance with what we're sharing, what we're seeing, what we're opening up into. So you can start to reflect upon your own experience of awakening and to see how it is for you, where you are, which states and stages you're in, where you might need support, where you're being challenged, where you're opening, where you can celebrate, where you can relax. So we're going to explore many different avenues and dimensions of the whole nature of awakening. So thank you very much for being here. Is just inviting us to recognize that what we're offering here is not just for us, it's for the world, listeners, people interested in waking up, connecting to themselves, connecting to life more deeply, more fully, and just asking that in some way we can be of service during this call, during this sharing, this dialogue, this presentation, and that we might say things which are useful to anyone who's listening, that might touch them, move them, open them, release them, inspire them in some small or big way, to help them take the next steps in their life. So I'm asking for support for myself, and you, Beka, and all those listening. We might be connected to a force of life, love, wisdom, wonder, beauty. Well, I'm here as much as I can be.
Yeah, I feel a lot more grounded.
So thank you for finding this podcast. It's a real joy to offer this work. And just to introduce something about where it's coming from and where we're coming from with this. It's a warm invitation to support you in moments of awakening. Awakening and then sustaining that, how to apply what you're seeing and being inspired by spiritual realization, how to ground that into the earth, how to ground that into the everyday, into the workplace, into relationships, into your hobbies, into your activities, into your fitness, into your world, how to integrate, ground, and anchor spiritual realization in the practical world of our everyday existence. So this is often discovered and explored as what's called the hero's journey from here into a deeper place of here, into the realm of magic and mystery, insight and inspiration, and then drawing that treasure back, bringing it back with you, integrating that and weaving that into your life and the life of the communities that you live in. Now, this is a very important piece of the journey because much of the realization journey that I've been on has been very much in isolation, in meditation, by myself, my own inquiry. And actually, I feel there's a new emergence happening right now. Is this capacity to awaken together, to support each other together, to co-vision, to co-create, to collaborate. And so we very much want to hold a space for you in which you can discover that place of community from the heart level, community with enriched qualities, sharing resources, wisdom, and insight. And we're going to be speaking from this place. We're going to be in dialogue together. We're going to be inviting other people to come on this podcast, people to give you insight and encouragement and practical tools that you can apply and integrate into your world to enrich your lives and the lives of those around you. So thank you very much for coming and finding us, and hope you get what you need, want, and desire in this space.
Hi, I'm Beka Carson, and I am an energy healer and coach. I've been on this journey of awakening, deep awakening, for about 6 to 7 years. And through all of that, I came to a point where I realized the connection with my body and my mind was really lacking. And that's what started this whole journey for me. As years in the fitness industry, I've been in the fitness industry for about 10 years, both strength and conditioning work and yoga. And with that, I started to add my practice of meditation and herbal remedies and my spiritual practice, which grew into Reiki and other forms of energy healing. So for me, I am so passionate about sharing this journey because it helped me heal on an emotional level, on a physical level, combating even an autoimmune disease that I was told I would never come into remission for. So my joy is to be here to share this information with you. For those of you who listen, I hope it really touches the heart space and you can find some kind of relation in what we have experienced and the tools that we have learned along this journey that we're sharing with you.
Hi, so I'm Guy Barrington, and I'm very delighted to be here. I've been involved in spiritual development, spiritual awakening for about 30 years, and have a deep, deep passion for connecting with our hearts, connecting with humanity, connecting to the qualities of life and how we can express and connect in even more beautiful, wonderful, creative ways. I work as a dance facilitator, I'm a full-time father, conscious coach, and many other things. And within all of this, I like to weave the depth of understanding that I've received and been blessed by in my life. So it's a great joy to be here, and really happy to serve you in whichever way we can through podcasts, interviews, dialogues, workshops, breathing techniques, anything that comes through. Very happy to share what I've realized and hopefully which will support you in your process of development, awakening, and cultivating your human potential.
I'm really excited to be doing this because the awakening journey has been one of the most challenging and magnificent things I've ever experienced. And over the last few years, I've gone through so many changes, and those changes, although I knew while they were happening, this growth was happening. I was feeling really good about it, but I didn't really know how to connect that new me and what I was experiencing in that moment to all of what I had really been taught, what the truth I had lived by, what I had known as my reality. So for me, it was just so fast, and I didn't really have a lot of grounding. So I am really excited and just passionate about talking about the ways I found grounding through that, and how I learned to deepen my connection with others that were going through this journey as well, and to take some of the heat off of it, because a lot of times, coming at least sort of from the feminine perspective, I can be a bit of a perfectionist. And once that journey started, it was like, okay, what's the next step? And what's the next step? And how do I get through? Like, let me just go ahead and get from point A to point B. So a lot of it for me was just learning to really embody those experiences and sit with them for a while before I was waiting for the next to happen, or that next cool mystical type experience to happen. But to really just be there for myself with the journey, and understand that that's the whole point. This is the journey. Especially once you start to awaken, it's just going. The easier you can just settle into it and allow it to happen instead of trying to force something to happen, the easier the process will be. It won't feel quite as heavy. So yeah, welcome.
Yeah, so as we explore in this conversation and expression of our different stories, I'm pretty sure we're going to get lots of different moments of awakening appear in our lives. For me personally, there have been many different moments and different ways of integrating and processing and grounding them. Right at the beginning, I had no idea even how to ground some of the experiences. Sometimes I'd have certain, what can be called spiritual phenomena, like the body might shake, for example. Some people call this Kundalini awakening, and there's a surge of energy through the body. And in that moment, there's a sense of euphoria, joy, opening. Some people call this grace, or Holy Spirit, Holy Fire, or life force. But when it's happening, you've like no idea what's actually happening, because it often takes you by surprise. Sometimes it can be induced a little bit with breath work or meditation or some kind of release work. And sometimes it comes on spontaneously. In my case, I've worked a lot with dance and would often have these experiences in like the deeper states of conscious movement. So I would have worked through certain levels of physical stress in my body, any tension, I would have stretched and opened and loosened and got into flow state. And then deepening into the journey of the dance, suddenly there would be moments of these like surging energy through my body. And at first, I had no idea what was happening. It's like I would be inside the dance and would feel all of this and would just like, wow, this is strange, and wouldn't have any way of processing it afterwards because it would kind of come and go. What it felt like was like sort of charges of electricity through my spine, and sometimes heat, sometimes cold. But there was definitely a sense of like life force, like there was a river flowing in me that I wasn't aware of previous to that moment. So it was beyond the mind. And so there was no point in the mind attempting to understand it. There was an experience happening through my body which was doing something to this vehicle. And then maybe it would come, weeks, months, even years later, a deeper understanding of what just happened or what happened back then. So what happened in my case was this would happen quite regularly on the dance floor. And over time, I started to integrate. So what was quite strong, shaking, fiery energy at first, which felt like quite a radical physical opening, got more gentle, more subtle, more delicate. And yet I still could feel the sense of the presence of the life force flowing through me. To the point now where I sense it's here, but I'm not shaking. I don't need to shake. My body doesn't need to have that more radical expression. It's more integrated and grounded, and the energy field has become what I am. So it's like a progressive opening from inside out. So that's just a taste of something, a little snapshot of a moment that happened to me on the dance floor. I'm happy to talk more about this later and weave it together with other contexts. Just in your case, Becca, how was it for you? What kind of experiences have you got? What would you consider awakening to be?
Yeah. So in the beginning, for me, I love hearing this your side of it, because it sounds like yours maybe was a little more progressive. Kind of was happening over time. For me, I think mine really started several years before I acknowledged it, and I was dealing with a lot of guilt and shame around, leaving the religious beliefs that I was raised with, and all of that. So I was suppressing it, and I felt I didn't know what even the word out of alignment, or out of alignment, or what that meant to be out of alignment was at the time, but I just knew something was off. And so for me, I feel like it was almost like waiting for this big combustion to happen. So I've been suppressing it, like these changes, this doesn't feel like truth. I'm suppressing what I want to experience, what I want to say. And then all of a sudden, it was actually through meeting someone, a very deep soul connection, that I had this experience, and I knew the moment we locked eyes, which I know can sound a little cheesy, it wasn't love at first sight, but it was just this thing that sparked for me. And it was like something inside was no longer going to allow it to be suppressed. And that was the first time I heard, I think it was my higher self, but something outside of me in a way, not just my mind, that little voice in my mind. And it said, nothing will ever be the same after this. And I heard that over and over again for, it was like within this 24-hour period. And I kept questioning, like, what does that mean? Like, I know it's truth. I feel like it's truth. And over the next few days, I started experiencing, and I guess mine was Kundalini. I just didn't have quite the same physical experience. That had been building. I had it through dance, through meditation, a lot of times through yoga. But it was like that moment, that connection made with someone, that I started hearing um, what I thought were voices at the time, but it was, like at my spirit team and my higher self, just finally that truth coming through. I started hearing um, other people's thoughts that I was very close to. Like I could sit next to someone, because at that point, I think I just opened up so much, I didn't know how to filter it. So I was starting to hear their thoughts right before they would say something to me. I was having wild prophetic dreams, like things that would come true weeks later. So it was really intense for me. There was this side of, I look back on it and a lot of it was exciting, but it was honestly terrifying in the beginning, because that energy was so strong. And I think it's even stronger now in me, but it's that I have, my body has adjusted to it. And a big part of my journey has been working with the body and getting back in touch with my body. So, it's no surprise that I'd been suppressing all this stuff. And then my body was like, hey, we're taking over and just opening everything up. So for me, awakening it felt very much like I was watching life, like I was sitting in a play and I was watching a play, and I knew somewhere in the back of my mind that there were things that went on behind the scenes to make this play come together, that gave the actors their verses, that handled the lighting, but you're not thinking about that. You're just enjoying the entertainment. And then all of a sudden the lights came on and someone just took the blinds or the curtains back, and I saw all of the little details going on behind it. And it's like I would fixate on one and then I'd see the step behind that one and behind that one. So for me, it was taking the blinders off. It was taking the blinders off of, I guess, the reality that, we're all raised with a certain set of beliefs from our parents or caregivers, and society. And some of that can be, gender related too, like what I think society thinks a woman should be like or act like or dress like. And all of a sudden you strip all of that back to, who am I? Who am I without any of that and without holding myself back? And that to me was that awakening moment. It was just like, I can't hide anymore. And it was a long journey, and it's still an ongoing journey to work through all those layers. But that moment I always look back on, because I knew things would never be the same. And I didn't know why or how, but it was, yeah, once you've started it, you really can't go back.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. Yeah, I can really feel a sense of what you're with there and what you've opened up into. And I would totally agree with you. The sense of it's once you've been through that doorway, you can't go through that doorway. As I've progressed through different years of working with this material, looking at this, studying this, I've come to a distinction, which is the distinction between horizontal living, which is the human growth developmental cycle of a human being, from infancy, toddler, childhood, adolescence, and so forth. So there's the progressive biological movement, developmental sequences that we all go through as part of being human. But awakening happens on the vertical. Awakening is a vertical ascent and descent, but it's this movement, vertical movement, and it intersects with a horizontal line. So here I am, just moving through my day and my 9 to 5, my ordinary, my expected reality, my regular habits, friends, and everything else. And then suddenly there's a car crash, there's a death, there's a spiritual emergency, there's an opening of the chakras. Something happens, some catalyst happens, and suddenly I enter a non-ordinary reality. Whether it's through the stress, whether it's through the fear, whether it's through the excitement, whether it's through a deliberate, spiritual practice. But suddenly we move into the vertical way of living, interpreting, feeling the reality that's here. Now, again, as you start to move into the vertical, and if you've been living your whole life on a horizontal interpretation of how the world is, then one of the first things that comes up is this ego fear. This fear of like, where am I? What is this? The sense of the carpet being pulled away. And so there's uncertainty, and there's a tendency to grab back, to grab back to the familiar. But it's too late. it's like the carpet's gone. You're moving in a different direction now. Whether it's spirit or life or circumstance or energy, something has moved you into this other dimensional state. So I just want to acknowledge for myself, for you, and anybody who's listening, all of us listening, is that these moments of shock, sometimes this is called spiritual emergency, and I say that because it's the not emergency so much as in the terror of an emergency, but the emergence of something else is emerging rapidly. So just a new way of understanding what emergency could look and feel like. And in ancient mystical and mystery schools, there would be a guide, an ally, a master, a shaman, a seer, a sage to support you through that journey, because it was expected to happen. It was known to happen. It was seen as a natural part of the evolution of the human being. So Ken Wilber, who's somebody I like the way he describes and gives distinction, as a philosopher, he talks about this movement and balance between the growth cycles and the awakening emergence. And so I just wanted to drop that in between this movement between the ordinary and the mystical. What I've come to realize is that when you can move with this at the intersection point, so it's not I'm either or, I'm both and. Because if you go for the either or reality, either you live in the mundane, the muggle world, the ordinary world of existence, the predictable, the known world, or you live in this magical, mysterious, spiritual state, but not very grounded, not very anchored. So what I've discovered in myself is to keep looking, am I at the intersection? The place where I can feel the presence of the vertical, feel the mystery, feel the magic, feel the inspiration, have access to that, be presently alive in that, and at the same time be very functional. Eating, shopping, cleaning the house, working, doing the things of a human being. And this is what I consider meaning to be. So, together with this conversation of awakening, for me, a natural insight is why the awakening. Well, the awakening gives more meaning to your life, it gives more quality to your life. It opens a doorway that was previously closed. I might have been living inside of a habit for a while that was giving a certain measure of satisfaction, but I wasn't really happy. I've got the things of the world, I've got the house, the this, the that, the other. But actually there's a deep place inside of me that's not being touched and shaken and woken. And somehow, I feel that a lot of people feel this. There's like an itch on the heart, it's like, oh, I can't quite get to it. And this awakening process is different to the growth process. It's something that kind of like it penetrates us on the vertical line. And as we start to describe it, hopefully like the ancient cultures of civilizations that have been in the past, who clearly understood this and expected this, we can start to bring in more guidance and support for other people as they go through these moments of fear, disorientation, confusion, loss, and guide people through. So you don't end up in a mental hospital. You don't end up in solitude or fear, but actually you go through this shattering moment and integrate and ground and apply. And the consequence of this is there's more quality, more enrichment in your life. That's something I've heard and discovered myself through this journey.
I like that you said that it's almost like you're using intention to come back to that line, the vertical and the horizontal. And I think that's a big thing that has inspired me, like through our conversations, and why I even want to put this content out there is that 2020, especially, this is a year of awakening, and it's like that curtain or that rug has been ripped out from under people without them having any say in it. It's like with my experience, it definitely happened, but I think I was at a point where I was open enough for it to happen, and I knew that there was something that I wanted that was greater. And for a lot of people right now that I'm seeing and working with, it's almost been like they didn't have any idea this was coming. So it can feel that emergence, that emergency. It can feel like a fire alarm is going off inside of you. Like what, how do I deal with this new reality? Because I've thought this way so long. Even if you want to expand outside of that, if that has been your reality for so long, it feels rather traumatic. So for me, the way that I really grounded was getting back into the body, and that was when I dove deep into that mind-body connection. Like when I was first fascinated with that, it was through the neuroscience and how to retrain my brain to create a reality that I enjoyed more, and see things from a different perspective. But when I realized what was really happening, with my awakening process, everything was being upgraded. It starts for a lot of people in the mind, and they're, like having these realizations and dreams and all these cool mystical experiences, but then a lot of times completely neglect the body. And if your mind is changing at this pace, your body is going to take a little longer to catch up with it generally. So that means, it almost can feel like a depression at times. It's like you need more sleep. You might have a change in appetite. You might decide you don't want to eat meat anymore. All these other things that aren't talked about quite as much, at least on the places I was getting information going through that first part of my awakening. So I think that's just something really, really important to realize, is that you can ground yourself. Everybody has the tools to check back in and nurture their body, and that will help them through this process too. It's so interconnected. Sometimes we just look at that like, oh, that's not the answer. That's too simple. I'm not just going to do yoga and breathe and I'll feel better. But sometimes it really is that simple. Checking in with yourself and nourishing yourself. What do I need right now? Is it socialization and community, or do I need to be alone and be okay with this feeling of being with myself and hearing this inner voice, and tapping into these emotions maybe that haven't been touched in years. And that's really helped me through this, is just learning to move that. Ecstatic dance was a big part of that. Yoga was really the beginning. That was the first way I started moving energy and healing my body. But it's important to try different modalities too, because within different times of the year, the month, even the day, like I'm not one modality isn't going to work for me. I don't always want to dance, but when I do, it's magical. It's amazing. Yoga is something I can always kind of fall back to and know that like that's a way to just ground myself quickly. So yeah, I just think that a big message that I like to share is get back to the very basic, simple parts of yourself, the breath, noticing things around you. Just that first step of mindfulness, it's connecting with your surroundings, connecting with that somatic awareness, and then embodying those feelings and things you're experiencing is so pivotal for me on this journey.
So it's bringing me to a wish to actually share a little practice that perhaps we can go into, and people watching can go into, just to check in. So that also, it's beautiful what we're saying, it's inspiring what we're saying, but also this honoring this pause moment, honoring a place where to integrate. That's also something that often happens in the awakening process. It's so radical and so transformational that you go on hyper speed. And actually, sometimes it's good just to sleep for the day, or just breathe in, or just chill out, go for a walk on the beach, and to let the thing ground. So is that okay with you? You'll just offer a little. Yep. Okay, so I'll guide us just for maybe just a short time. So to invite you to get comfortable, and to start with a nice big breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. As you're breathing in, really sense you're gathering in the beautiful quality of oxygen into your lungs. Breathing in fully and relaxing fully. So including your belly. It's a nice full belly on the breath. Then up into the lungs. Then rest. So as you're breathing consciously, you're slowing down. So nice slow breath now. Full breath in through the nose. Out through the mouth. So I'd like to invite you to bring all of your attention to the sensation of breath coming through the nostrils. And the sensation of breath coming out the mouth. So really feeling, sensing. This time really opening up your auditory sense, so really hearing the sound of the breath coming in, opening through the nose, through the mouth, Deeply listening to the breath coming in, breath coming out. So you're invited us to add an intention to the breath now. The intention simply to relax. So it's breathing in, also breathing in intention and the focus to relax on the breath. So relaxing in breath. Focusing on the word, the intention, relaxation on the out breath. Breathing in relaxation. Breathing out relaxation. So just taking a moment now, keeping your eyes closed. So we've shared a bit already in this podcast. Began a conversation, shared a few stories, a bit of insight about awakening. As you're breathing in, just to really invite you to notice what parts of the conversation, what parts of this presentation have you connected with and resonated with? What's caught your attention? So as you're breathing in, breathing out, just noticing. See if you can silently name that to yourself. It's like, oh, that was interesting. I saw that. I felt this. And just very simply, as you're breathing there, just allowing that insight, what you saw, what you heard, just to relax and weave into your body. So in this way, it begins to integrate. So it doesn't just remain as an idea, as a concept, as a story outside of you. So you breathe it in. As you're breathing in, you're owning your own experience. So you're coming closer, more intimacy with yourself, just allowing whatever you saw and heard to be your own in this moment. So breathing it in and digesting it on the out breath, relaxing. Again, just breathing in, drinking in, feeling relaxed into the body. So just take a gentle breath now. Just softly open the eyes, come back together. Also, just to bring it into our awareness as we're sharing, we might have these pause breaks sometimes, just little checking in breaks, a little water break, moment to stop the world. And just recognizing how important it is to reflect, to pause, to stop, to breathe in, breathe out. In the Western world, I don't know how it is for you, but there's a temptation to do and to arrive, to chase the goal, to get somewhere else. It's always about tomorrow or what was in the past. Rarely is about concentrating into the magic of the moment, like the power and passion of the presence, because we're looking back or forwards. So as we pause, we're like stopping that movement along the timeline. We're pausing and we're embracing the past and future, and we're drawing it back together. So we're condensing, we're gathering our power and saying, here I am now, here I am, here I am, and resting into this powerful presence. In many ways, the future will take care of itself. The past has already been taken care of. And so often we're scattering our energy, looking away from or into something. There are ways to generate imagination and creation. We will talk about these. But just for this moment, just really enjoying pausing, breathing in, digesting, and grounding. And I wish somebody had told me this early on in the awakening process, because it would have been so useful to stop, pause, digest, and rest. A very simple image I just want to give to us is, you have a glass of water and you shake the glass, so the glass is moving up and down and we're swirling all over the place as you're shaking it, of course. And that's kind of what it's like in the moment of awakening. It's like everything's being shaken and torn apart, the scenes, and the house of cards is falling down. It's it's like a big storm happening in the cup, in the glass. Simply put the cup down, put it down, leave it alone, and just watch what happens. And the shaking subsides and stills and stops. And sometimes we just got to put ourselves down. Don't amplify, don't get overexcited or super enthusiastic or super scared, or just put the glass down, stop, breathe, check in, bring the power back to now. And what I've noticed is that when the glass of water is still, it's not shaking, I can see more of what it is. Like I can really see into and feel into and get a deeper sense of what it means and feels to me. I've always found it very, very useful, and teach this a lot in dance or meditation or coaching, dialogue, just to pause. Yeah, that was me pausing.
It's the best advice you could give, really. The pause has been, I mean, the pause is, it's ironic with the spiritual journey. A lot of people are, like you said, they're rushing to get to this place, to become this person, to become this 2.0 version of themselves, who knows everything. Their intuition's just so strong, and we want all these things. But the awakening process is really becoming who you are, and you can only be yourself in that moment. Like that's all that exists. And until you can say this all day, but until you really experience it, have those moments like the meditation that we just did. And for me, it always helps me. I can do this even out in public. I don't have to sit there and really zone out. It's just tapping into my breath long enough to notice the pause between the inhale and the exhale. And when I get to that place, it's so calm and still, even when there's complete chaos around me, or I've got anxiety about something, or everything around me feels unstable, which often in this awakening process, that's how it is. Even with the dynamic when it comes to your relationships and how to interact with people when you're going through this, because that drastically changes. And for me, that caused a lot of anxiety. But when I finally learned, and it took a couple of years into it, to pause and like what that actually meant to feel that, and just be okay with that, and be okay with, maybe I am a little weird right now. Maybe people aren't going to relate to me the same way. Maybe I look different. I feel different, but maybe that's okay. This is just part of the process. And every time I remind myself, and something I still have to do, because I can get very caught up in that forward thinking. And as entrepreneurs, that's, we're always thinking, what do we want to put out, and all these exciting ideas that are coming that we want to bring to fruition. But until we can just be really comfortable and happy with where we are in that process, on our spiritual journey, through our career path, through our relationships, none of the rest really matters. We're searching for something that's not even in existence. It's like when you're happy with where you are, and you can just be content in that. I should say be content, because it's hard to be really happy sometimes when you feel this anxiety of the awakening. But when you can truly be content with it and say, you know what, I feel sad today. I don't want to do anything. I need to rest. I don't want to be around anybody. Nothing looks and feels and tastes the same to me right now. And that's okay. Then everything else just settles. It's like that glass of water just settles around you. I like that example, because I use the one of a pond. If you drop something in a pond and it's clear water and you can see it, but then you frantically go looking for it and you like move all this dirt around, the more you move and you're frantically going for it, the more things around it just cloud and you can't see anything. And you have to sit there and wait and be patient and, inevitably settle into that pause of letting the water settle, or the dust and the dirt settle back down. Then you see it, it's shining right there in the light where it was. And I kind of feel like that for me that's how my awakening journey was. It was like, I was looking for this better version of myself, but that version of myself was always here. I was just ignoring her. I wasn't listening to her. And so that's really the magical part of this, is when you start to settle into that, like, that is already me. I have more to experience and I have more to grow for sure. That's going to be a thing the rest of my life. But I am exactly who I need to be, and exactly enough for where I am right now. And that to me is really embodying that awakening journey. like awakening to who you are is being okay with being in love with who you are,
Hmm.
and that can be hard, but it's giving yourself the patience and the space to grow into that and
Yeah.
to sit with it.
Hmm. As you're speaking, I'm just I'm feeling to offer another distinction. It's our male female dynamic. I want to give you a structure and a map and a method, which is great. I love it. I love it that we're sharing together because we can balance each other out and complement. So men and women listening here, hopefully you can hear and see different parts of you as we're talking. Um, yeah. So something I would like to share is something I've come to distinguish between the difference between self development and spiritual awakening. And for me, they're radically different dynamics, and I found it very useful to see it clearly. Because what I also notice is that people often mistake this and they overlap and call one the other and the other the other, and it's not that. So the way I comprehend it, and just to be clear, there's a channel being called Ram Through says the menu is not the food. I like this, or the map is not the territory. So I'm not pretending to tell you a truth now. This is just a description to explore a topic, and I'm not attached to it being this way or any other. It's just it's like a vocal tool. It's like we use language and beliefs and values to describe things. That's something also I want to refer to a bit later. Is that like this shattering of the attachment to fixed beliefs. That's something that really cracked open for me in the awakening process. My attachment to what I thought was true, and the liberation into not needing to even have any beliefs of anything being true, because the truth was already here. But we'll get into that a bit later. So self-development for me is what's moving along the horizontal line. That's our growth journey. There's another teacher I studied with some years ago called John DeRuta from Canada, and he presents the distinction between the human being, or our soul being, our heart essence, like the still small voice within, the quiet light, the beloved intimacy that we are, and the surface vehicles, which he distinguishes as mind, body, sensation, emotion. So there's this distinction between the being that we are, functioning and flowing through this human vessel, this instrument, this vehicle that we see, the visible form. The self-development for me is focusing on the instrument. It's like my body clearly has grown. I'm no longer a baby or a toddler, a teenager. It's that I'm growing, developing through time and space. That's inevitable. That the physical structure moves and grows. I've got a different knowledge base now to what I had yesterday, the day before, and 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So there's been this adding to of knowledge, which then influences my perception of the world. More knowledge, the more I see. I've traveled around the world several times and see more things by seeing more cultures. It opens me. Experience opens what I see. So this dimension of me, which is the huge dimension of our humanity, is subject to change and transformation. That's the growth period. And I highly expect this is going to continue to the day I die. I'm going to keep growing and adding to and evolving and developing in this sense. Awakening for me is this vertical, spiritual awakening. It's radically different. It doesn't involve time. It's timeless. It's the time of now. It's the magical present or the eternal moment. There's a tradition in Brazil called the Santo Daime. They call this miração, and it means visionary download. Yeah? And it happens in that pause, like you say, the pause in between the in and out breath. So it's a bit like if you consider a dream. So in a dream, you might dream a whole lifetime. And in the horizontal line, it's been 5 minutes. But in the dream time, you've experienced the whole life. You've grown young to old. If you want to explore this, go watch Inception. Good movie that describes this with Leonardo DiCaprio. This movement of the vertical, this miração, this awakening process. So this is happening outside of time. So it can happen at any moment. Some people have spontaneous awakening as babies. Some have them when they're 60, 70. It can happen on any moment in the timeline. It's not dictated by the timeline. It's not dictated by circumstances. This was something I studied as well. I saw these yogis and spiritual practitioners like pushing, trying. And then there'd be the man or woman who's doing nothing, apparently. No spiritual, gets the complete sublime blessing of grace. Right? And it didn't seem fair. It's like, oh, I've put all this effort in, I've put all this work in, I'm so pious, I'm so, good. And actually, the awakening process, in my view, doesn't respect that at all. It's like these openings, openings, and there's a sense of alertness and readiness around it. So where I'm living in is a dance, and maybe we can just expand the sense of the conversation here, the dance between growth and awakening. I'd like to bring these two distinctions in. So there's my self-development growth, which is continuously being added to and evolving and developing. And then there's awakening moments, with this expansion of consciousness and energy, which then feed back into like the growth. Suddenly I've made a quantum leap. And you do see this with people from here to here. It's like, from morning to night the next day, they're a different person. You wake up and they're still the same person, but something's opened inside of them. So if you're okay, I'll just tell a little story from something that I read about. This woman had a near-death experience, NDE, and she described it. And she gave this metaphor. She said it's like being in a warehouse. Her ordinary life was like being in a warehouse with a flashlight, with a torch. And, so she's walking around, she's opened the door, and she's shining on the different, layers in the warehouse. And she's seeing certain items, very small bandwidth, which is dictated by the torch that she's shining the beam on. So this torch represents the blinkered vision that she had, that she was defining, calling her life. So what she saw was, her family, her work, her world, her expectations, her dreams, her promises. Then she had this near-death experience. And she described it as going back into the warehouse, but suddenly all the lights were on. Yeah. She didn't have a torch, and she suddenly saw the vastness of this warehouse. And it was like as old as time, as high as the universe. Yeah. And she was in this in complete and utter awe at the intricacy and the magnificence and the detail of what's behind the curtain. Yeah. And so you got this image of us wandering around life with a torchlight on, trying to make sense of this world. What does it mean? I got only a bit of information. The media's lying. Who's telling the truth? Like all these very small flashlights, getting glimpses of truth, getting glimpses of the reality, but not able to interpret it because they're interpreting from their own perception. Another good movie. Go watch Vantage Point. It shows one scene from many different angles. And this sensation of like, that moment of awakening for me is the warehouse. The lights come on. And suddenly that's where it can't be the same anymore. Once you've heard the inner whisper, which you can call spirit or guidance or force, once you've felt the power of empathy, once you've listened with your heart and you can, really know the flower, and know your sense of purpose and place, but there's no turning back. You can't go back to the flashlight reality. And you might try, you might want to, but it's like, it doesn't make any sense to have a flashlight when the lights are on. There's humor in this. I want my flashlight. You got this whole thing. So I just wanted to drop that image in because for me that was so graphic and beautiful and wonderful, and it gave me just such a clear context of like. Then it brings in the question: how can we prepare ourselves? How can we support the audience, those listening today? How can you prepare for that moment when the flashlight is dropped and the warehouse lights go on? And can you prepare for it? So, and hopefully in even beginning this conversation, we're actually opening space for people to begin an inquiry. What is the nature of this?
I'm glad you made that distinction because can be closely intertwined, especially in the beginning, because we take that masculine energy in ourselves and we look at it like that timeline of, okay, our spiritual awakening happened now. And so, I want to do this, and like expect to see it all laid out when, it's just not, it's not that way. It doesn't have any kind of structure. Like personal development for me, I can quantify things and I can check myself and kind of look back on them. And it's this nice little clean, neat timeline. And spiritual awakening, like we've said, it just kind of, it can hit you completely out of nowhere. It usually does blindside people. So I do think that they coincide in the sense that in my different awakening moments, there's moments that have brought awareness to like a habit or a pattern that I was repeating. For me, it's been mostly seeing patterns in like relationships and those dynamics where all of a sudden that awakening moment when the lights were on, I saw back to my childhood. I saw what I was not only taking in as a child, but what my parents who instilled that programming in me, what they were taking in. And like, I could just have these moments of seeing my ancestral line to where this had been passed down unconsciously. And so that was the awakening part of it. But then the personal development came in after that with, okay, how can I integrate this in? I have this realization. It's not like I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I know that's how it's going to be. And so I'm a different person. It's years of this habit or the same way of doing things. And
Mhm.
I've actually experienced some of that this year. It's, awakening can be so humbling because you'll think, oh, I've been through the hardest lessons, or I've gone through all of this, so it should be a little easier. And this year for me really challenged me on that front, of where I haven't been in a receiving mode, and just really how that pattern has played out in my relationships. And it was right there in front of me with my first awakening, but I just didn't see the full extent of it. So I had some other moments this year that really brought that to my attention. So then, my personal development side can come in and say, okay, one thing at a time, let's work on this exercise or practice or modality, and see how I can feel better with this and how I can interact with people in my immediate surroundings differently. Can I look and listen? Can I look at my friend differently and listen to her opinion differently without judgment? Can I accept? Can I challenge myself to accept something that I really, accept someone with a belief system that I really disagree with? Right
Mhm.
now in America with politics, that's a huge topic.
Mhm.
And so that's really how I started to embody that and kind of integrate using my personal development timeline with the way my awakening journey was going. But I think that I really love that you brought that up, because in the beginning that was very intertwined for me. I did not see the difference. And so I tried to kind of push forward in that same way. But
Mhm.
for me, it's always been when that awakening moment comes, I need time to just be and not be around anyone and not push myself.
Mhm.
And you have to be flexible. You have to, I know we all have jobs and families and other responsibilities, but you do have to make that time for yourself to just let those changes sink in. And that might just mean sitting out in your hammock for a couple hours. It might mean going on a little mini vacation, whatever it is. Get get out of your head and just into the body, and kind of feel what's happening, what changes are happening, how that feels on an emotional level, getting in touch with that. And then later on is how I kind of step into the personal development. But I think when the two are blended, that's when we get that spiritual bypassing that a lot of, I think, I know I went through a phase of this is like, okay, the reality of things is too difficult to accept that my reality is so different than what I thought it was, or, is going to be. And so how can I just, yeah, completely like slow down and just accept that? But yeah, I think the spiritual bypassing is just a big thing people have to watch for right now, because it's an easy way to drown out what's going on in the real world. But we live in a real world. It's important to remember that we are humans here for this human experience. That's what I'm here for. So if I'm chasing this, enlightened part of myself that isn't in this moment, do I want to be that version? You could live the monk life and go up and sit in the Himalayas and completely disconnect. And that is the path for some.
Mhm.
But for most of us, we're here to experience life as human beings. We're here
Mhm.
to see the pitfalls and to rise up from that and to be that phoenix coming from the ashes and to share that journey and story, which is what we're here doing. So other people feel that connection. So in that way, I just encourage people to, really be conscious of the content that you're bringing in. Don't overconsume. That was a big part of my journey, is overconsume when you go through that rabbit hole of YouTube and any kind of blogs that you can read on these spiritual mystical experiences, because you don't want to feel alone. But you know, be careful. Just don't fall into that. That reality of like, I'm living up here in my upper chakras. My crown is wide open, but I don't have my feet on the ground, and I'm not connecting with humans, other people around me. So that would be my. If I could go back on it, I wish someone would have really had that warning or message for me, to not get too lost in it, to remind myself to be human, and to not push. It will come when it's ready to come.
It's wonderful, yeah. As you're speaking, it's just I'm just sending off like a fireworks of other inspirations and possibilities. I'll just go with a few that popped up in between that. So just connecting this, the hero's journey or the heroine's journey. This is a distinction that came from Joseph Campbell, a famous mythologist, and just this honors what you're talking about here, this integration, right? Because it says that here I am, ordinary man, ordinary woman, moving out from my village to the big world to seek treasure and fortune. But the big world also represents the mystical world, the world of healing, the world of insight, revelation. You're going into this other non-ordinary state to gather something which is necessary for the village. It's necessary for the community of people you're living in. It's necessary for your daily life. That's why you're making the journey. That's why you're going on a pilgrimage or the Camino or a spiritual quest. Not for the quest itself, but what you can bring back. And I feel that was really missing a lot. For me, the quest was given the priority. And then you get into this like spiritual competitiveness. I've gone through these stages, I'm this bright. And you're making such a big deal out of the quest and not the purpose of the quest, which is to bring it back to humanity, to be able to help people transform stress into vitality, to move from fear to love, to come back to center, to come back to heart, to shift from this agony of existence into creativity. It's like to bring the gift back and apply it. So this is the transformational, transforming. Trans means movement, form is what's moving, transforming and changing. So the hero's journey, the heroine's journey is all about, going to these mystical states or healing states, but then returning, the return part of the journey. And, for me, the emphasis is to give value to every single stage. Some of the traps, if you like, which have appeared along the way, and, I've read about this in many different spiritual accounts, is that, so you go out on a mystical journey and, you recognize that, you want to bring back more of your confidence, more of your creativity. So it might be that you're quite a shy person or, a bit embarrassed about yourself and your abilities. And so you go out into the big world to get some acting training or cultivate yourself or meet a meditation master. And over many years, you acquire some skills, abilities, potential. You access deeper depths in yourself, the horizontal and the vertical integrate. And now you bring that blessing back to the community you left, because that was the original intention. To come back to support the young men and women in the community so that they can grow up with more confidence that you didn't have. So then you're constantly paying it forwards. So in the Western world, and I don't mean this specifically as a judgment, it's more of a comment, because in the Western world, generally, there's a more emphasis on the identity. And in the Eastern philosophy, there's more of an emphasis on the non-dual, on the field of oneness. These, for me, are two ends of the same spectrum. They're not either or, they're and. They're just different extreme perspectives of the one continuum of consciousness and energy. And I'm very, very enthusiastic, passionate about integration. For me, it's the key. It's not the details. I could focus into details, but then I always bring them back into integration, because it's when you put all the puzzles together on, you see what the picture says of the jigsaw puzzle. If you focus on the separate pieces, you don't understand what you're looking at. So I've always introduced this as like eagle vision, if you like. So I just need to pause for a minute. I'm getting a bit excited. Yeah. So the hero's journey, integrating, grounding, taking time, digesting. So that's what I want to talk about. The possibility of a trap here. As you enter into certain spiritual processes or self-development processes or emotional release processes, you can feel a lot of things, which you didn't feel previous. You might have felt numb, and now you feel full of emotion. You might have felt a little bit of breath, and now you feel ecstasy in your body. You might have had a small bit of vision, and now you can see the whole universe. So these are the gifts and the powers of liberation. These things come as part of the awakening. But what I want to emphasize is what I've come to see is these are byproducts. They're not the main event. Right? They're a consequence of waking up. Now, a lot of people can then go down the rabbit hole of, oh, wow, now I'm so psychic, I'm become a medium. Or I've got all this healing power, I'm going to become a healer. So you take the gift, and I'm not, saying this is right or wrong. I'm just saying that you can take the gift and then focus on the gift and apply just that, instead of surrendering deeper, deeper, deeper to the core and the purpose of why you're awakening in the first place, to connect to your radiant heart, to connect to your honesty and your truth. Like go all the way home, not halfway home. So I had a very good teacher who said to me, always remember you're the total tree of life. All the branches are on this tree, all the branches, psychic abilities, healing, vision, everything else that you need is there. And it will come to you as and when it's necessary. never forget you're the tree. Grow as one tree, roots, branches, trunk, everything all at once, an interconnection between the earth and the sky and everything around. Become a shelter for the birds and picnickers, and grow good fruit. And, become a generous, overabundant tree, not to get lost on the branches. And there's a temptation when you're focusing on self-development, is that you can do a lot of branch trainings. I get more confidence, more sexuality, more vision, more leadership, and forget to integrate it back into the whole. So great, I'm glad I've cultivated that branch. Now back to my full presence. All right, now I can see this. Okay, back to my wholeness. Yeah. So I just wanted to emphasize what you're saying there about this integration journey, and because the phenomena of awakening, I get it's exciting and terrifying, yeah, but it can also become another addiction. Yeah? And this is a trap. You can get lost down that rabbit hole for years. You keep regenerating the Kundalini energy or the orgasmic energy or the visionary energy, and you declare yourself as that, and you get locked into that definition. You make an image of the awakening instead of like the free-flowing process of that was a byproduct, that was a gift, like a signpost along the way that I'm moving through a certain stage. But the main event is coming home to my heart. That's my main event. Come back to my deepest essence and authenticity, and celebrate the fact that we have all these gifts, we have all these intelligences and all these potentials. And I'm really happy we're using them now to speak and move and communicate. But recognizing that the one who's using the gifts is the main event. You being here, me being here, us being here together. Now I'm going to pause a little bit.
Yeah. It's funny and I remember the first year of when the awakening first started, synchronicities were a huge thing for me. And this kept coming up as I was listening to you speak, remembering that I'd have these little goalposts, along the way. I would see 1111 everywhere, and I'd see some other number, but then it would match, with every experience, a similar type of experience, it would be that same number. And I was seeing them everywhere. And I remember being so caught up in that for months, just how cool I thought it was. First, I was scared of it and I thought I'm losing my mind. And then I settled into it, excuse me, and I realized, okay, well, this is just showing me a sign. And at that point, because it was very early on, and I was going through so much change, I needed those reminders. I needed to just have that, my guidance team, they were coming to me and saying, you are on the right track. You are on the right track. So then when a little bit down the road, that stopped happening. And so my first thought was, oh no, I'm off track. It stopped. What do I do? And then I started fighting for it and losing what you were saying, losing the whole purpose and essence of what this journey was all about for me. But I needed also to experience that. I needed to experience getting lost in that and to come back from it and come to that eagle's point of view after the fact and say, oh, well, okay, I'm not going to let that happen again with the next cool thing that happens on my journey. So it was an important lesson learned. But I say that because I know a lot of people, that's a big thing in the beginning of the journey is these synchronicities. Don't get so much lost in the experience of your meditation practice and this Kundalini awakening and all these other things that happen. Just enjoy it and let it pass. Just be there for it, fully experience it, and then let it pass. And don't use that as that marker. The way I did is, well, if I'm not seeing signs everywhere and all these cool things happening, I must be off track. But in reality, they were saying, you don't need those anymore. You've actually corrected course and changed a lot of things. We'll show you more signs when you get to the next point and you're ready for that next awakening. But it's like when you first start dating someone, you want to enjoy this process of getting to know them and not rushing it. You don't say, well, okay, here's my key and my apartment number. And, if you can move in next week and then we'll start this dating process, maybe we'll go ahead and get a wedding on the books next year. Nobody would do that. There's, excuse me, this journey that we enjoy of getting to know someone, the butterflies in the beginning and the innocence of it, and then opening up and seeing those deeper layers. But often that would be way too much and too intense in the beginning. You want to form that relationship and connection and bond with someone before you go into those deeper layers. So for me, the awakening journey is very much like that. I don't need to see everything right away because I would probably lose my mind. I would not be ready for it. I know 5 or 6, 7 years ago, I would not have been ready for what I'm experiencing now in the past couple of years. So,
Mhm.
yeah, just don't get caught up. Don't get caught up in the sensations that you're experiencing. Journal it, make that memory of it, because those are great things to look back on, and like this conversation, to share those experiences of. But don't use that as your guide, or your goal, put your mile marker or milestone
Yeah.
along the journey of, like, I have to see that to know I'm progressing. Because
Yeah. I,
there's
I've seen some people who try and map out like these are the stages of awakening, and I mean, of course, there's some truth to it, yeah. But most people also say it doesn't happen in a straight line. It's more circular, and it's very random. Sometimes they go back to front and upside down. For some people, there's a radical shock. There's an opening, there's a gateway, and suddenly, I had an experience. I got struck by a ball of lightning when I was doing the washing up once, and it took me by, it was a beautiful lightning storm. I was just in the family house doing the washing up as you do, and this ball of lightning hit. I saw it hit the ground beside me, and it came through the window and hit me in the elbow. And for the next month, I lived on lightning. It's like I became vegan that day. I gave up alcohol, went out running. It's like my system shifted, like, and it's like I was educated on lightning for a month. And then there was an experience that happened at the end of the month where I felt this like energy just pouring out of my fingers. I felt like the lightning was leaving my system. And I'd had this like onboard educational system of what recalibration feels like, to be recalibrated by the light of lightning. Now, if I rewind a couple of years before, I'd asked for this experience. I thought, oh, it'd be really so cool to get hit by lightning. I'd met other people who had, and I'd seen it as a shamanic awakening, all these things. So I'd actually asked for this experience. And when it first came, my first thought was, I'm going to die. That was the first thing that occurred to me in the first 5-10 minutes. I was checking in because like my system was like overloaded with vibration, with intensity, with shock. And it's like my house of cards was falling down in that moment, and it just transformed. It like burnt away some of the patterning that just could not be there. Like it was clear for that month at least, I couldn't eat meat. It's like that vibration was not working with the vibration in my body. It's like I wasn't drinking much alcohol, but I couldn't drink any. It's like I had to move my body. I had to exercise. It's like suddenly it was, and it just sent me on a path that way. So that was a really interesting moment. But I also want to say at the same time, in the same breath, that I'm very, very conscious as we're talking right now, not to glamorize awakening. I have had some experiences, and I could talk about them with super enthusiasm like this one and other things, and end up glamorizing the moment instead of understanding the nature of the moment in the bigger context. And this, I think, comes back as well to partly how we've been trained and oriented in this world of status and symbol, image, and social media presentation. Like me, love me, just like see the exterior form and let's glamorize that, and that gives me a sense of value and worth and status. And so what can happen is that you have an experience of awakening, and then you tell the story about it, and then you make your life out of it, and then you make your practice out of it, and suddenly you've become identified and attached. I don't feel there's an issue at all in describing. I think it's useful that we describe these moments. It helps other people describe their own moments. What becomes an issue is when you start getting attached to it and attempting to grab it and hang on to it. It's like sand through your hands, water through your hands. It's like you can't hold it. It's not meant to be held. It's an initiation moment. It's a revelation moment to show you that you're more than you think you are. Yeah, it's a glimpse of the heart that you know you are. You've always dreamt of. It's like a discovery of what's underneath. Rumi has this poem, I'm a hidden treasure and I love to be known. It's a very well-known poem, this one. And this sensation that, like you said at the beginning of this call, it's like it wasn't so much an adding to process. It's like on the self-development horizontal movement, you know that you're growing. You can measure it, quantify it. Awakening is an emergent process. It's like a discovery of what's already here. You've always had an inkling that you are a soul. You've always had an inkling there is something beautiful and lovely about you that is incredibly wise and compassionate. You've had glimmers and tastes of it throughout your whole life, in little windows where the sunlights come not from outside in, but from inside out. Little moments of revelation. And then as you get more and more interested in these moments of revelation, because you become more and more interested in who am I, they become more continuous, more spontaneous, more available to you because you place your attention on them. So that's another thing to say, is that there's the adding to process, and the distinguishing quality of awakening for me is one of emergence. It's revelation. It's a happening of what's already here that was always known. And people often say this, like in this call, in this podcast, I hope that you're listening and you're just resonating, vibing with what we're saying, and say, I know that. Yes, you do know that because you are that already. Yeah? And what we're talking about is something which is intrinsic to the human being, to the human journey. Someone once told me that there's an impulse, in the same way we've got our animal instincts for survival, territory, and everything else. We have a spiritual instinct, an instinct to return to the heart of what we are. And it's embedded in every human creature. Throughout time, study all of history, there've always been some version of a spiritual quest, some god, some goddess, some religion, some spiritual approach or method. It's being found everywhere, every age in humanity, which is telling us the story. There is a deeper truth in all of us that we've all known about, always. And as we start to grasp this dance between growth and awakening and integrate the two together, then we really are in this beautiful, clear, rite of passage, if you like, this initiation journey of the human experience, where we can more easily and fluidly accept and understand and grow into these processes and allow these processes. So yeah, I'm super happy with this conversation with you, because it's like echoing and sounding back and reflecting. And as we're speaking together, it's giving more and more context, as opposed to I'm having my solitary experience. What does it mean? Well, it feels like I'm having the experience that every human being will have at some point in their life if they are open to this. This is part of our journey. Whether it's on your deathbed, whether it's as a 2-year-old or as a 10-year-old, when you're making love or walking on the forest or taking a photograph or painting a picture, at some moment you'll have this breakthrough where the sunlight that you are reveals itself. Now, I've just noticed, and John Rutter supported me in this, he said, in the darkest night, if there's a candle burning, focus on the candle, focus on that, focus on the smallest glimmer of light, and anchor into that, deepen into that, become that. And as you get closer and closer and closer to that light, you realize it's not a candle, it's the sun. It looked like a candle flame because you were looking at a great distance. As you get closer and closer and closer in awareness and presence and intimacy, you start to realize that there's a radiant sun here that is vaster than all that is including all that is. Yeah. So this is why when we have these intuitive whispers, like these little spirit voices or inner inspirations, if you give your attention to them, they expand and grow and develop. And I have them all the time. They come to me and I know to act on them. It's like, yeah, thank you. And as the minute you act, they expand and show you the whole, the metaphysics of what's being presented. So yeah, so my invitation is really trust your intuition, trust these inner moments of illumination, and let's make it the new ordinary, the new normal, which is integrating awakening and growth. And this is like the multi-dimensional development of an expansion of the fullness of our humanity. And in my personal case, it's given me tremendous meaning and passion. I can't imagine living without the vertical being within my horizontal. I love washing up. I get struck by lightning, have inspiration, write poems. It's like, for me, it's like grounded spirituality. I'm a father. It's like, I love my children. It's like earthing family. It's like, my life is relatively simple. I have this inner magical experience. I have this love, presence, compassion, wisdom. But if you were to follow me during the day, I live a very ordinary day. Well, maybe not quite so ordinary, but it's like it's human day. And I think this is the thing, to step beyond the glamorization of this and to say, actually, this is normal, this is expected. And here's a map, and here's guidance, and here's support. And we've all been through this. We're all going to go through this. So it's integrating that, as opposed to this like shock, what's happening, fall apart, and disorientation.
Yeah, and just to go along with that, add to it, to be okay with it, not to be okay with talking about it and sharing it. This is kind of one of those. Spirituality is growing a lot more. It's getting to be a more comfortable topic for people, but there's still a lot of taboo topics around it, and that's where you said we don't want to glamorize it, because I think that is, what you're going to get the focus on when you turn to social media or to some of these different retreats. Even, it's like glamorizing the neat parts, the fun parts, and that is great. There are those parts of it, those aspects, but you know, stepping out, for me, it was really important to step out of shame and embarrassment for feeling so different, for feeling like I couldn't connect with my old friends anymore. And I was able to, like, some friends inevitably will fall off, some relationships, that kind of comes to an end. Some will learn to grow with you. And honestly, some of the most challenging friendships that I've had, these relationships that have seen me through this transition, and they aren't necessarily on the same path, but we have learned how to integrate that into our friendship and how to be friends as these different versions of ourselves as we've grown older and gone through all this. So, just being comfortable talking about it and sharing, us sharing this experience, like the more you share, the more I feel comfortable sharing, and probably vice versa. And so that's, really our goal here is to allow you that space to
Mhm.
not only relate to what we're saying, but to be comfortable sharing it to in any way that you feel
Mhm.
is right for you. Because that was one of the most healing things I could have done for myself, is start talking about it. And for me, it was through writing at first, but just sharing those moments, the good ones, the bad ones, and just know that it's all part of the process, and it's not going to look exactly like the person next to you or your mentor or your healer. But that's also the beauty of it, because you have this unique lesson that you're learning for a reason, and you're going to be able to share it in a way that Guy and I can't even. So remember that on some of the darker moments, just know that there is a reason for that, and the more you can lean into that trust and knowing, the more your message is just going to come out of you. You're going to develop that fruit.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mm.
As yeah, I love it that we're weaving in a few tips and practices, and I get a sense of talking for a moment about where we resist awakening. Yeah. So there's the outright denial. It doesn't happen. It's not part of my reality. Right? I'm a very normal guy. It's not going to happen. Right? Don't believe in anything. There's no God. Blah blah blah. Right? So there's the complete denial of, yeah. And I'm not judging anything. I'm just noticing that I've always considered the human race is on a massive relay race, and we're at different points on the track. We're all running around the track, and this person's an old soul. They're on the last stages, and this one's a fresh one, green behind the ears and eager to go. So it's not meant with any judgment. I love it, the fact that you've got this kind of sense of a relay race, that we're passing on wisdom and insight and innocence, and everyone in their perfect place has a gift to give. Yeah. So saying that, looking at what is the gift of resistance, what is the gift of the one who's in complete refusal of awakening, yeah? And what's actually happening in that process. Yeah? So introducing the eagle vision again, and when I say eagle, I mean like expanding out. So you start to see the forest for the tree. You get the whole context, and broadening our perspective. And if you entertain the possibility, I like that phrase, entertain the possibility. So I'm not saying believe in this, entertain it as a possibility. Right? So that means gently open the doorway to consider something, be a consideration that it might be true, right? That you are a spiritual being having a human experience. Just consider, try it on for size, right? And the search for love and joy that we all have, and abundance, which sometimes manifests in terms of searching for money or houses, but it's still the search for abundance. Search for joy, which is often the search for contentment, connection. The love of family, which is often the love of connection and intimacy and tribal awareness. So however you dress it up, you know, culturally, whichever terminology, it feels that we're speaking the same heart language, yeah, the same human language. Yeah. Now, when I've been in tight places, so I'll look at my own experience, where I've been in resistance of awakening is where I've been attached to what is, yeah, or what I'm considering what is, which really is what was. For most people, what is what was into what is, right? And it took me a while to realize that I was producing what is from what was. I was cause into effect. So this was a denial of my creator presence. So that stage, I felt like victim of circumstance. I really generally felt stuff was happening to me. And I was in what people call the pain blame game. You're doing this to me, and it's your fault. So it's like it's not even denial of responsibility. It's like not even knowing that responsibility is present. It's like a stage before to deny it suggests you even know it's there. Yeah. So that there's a stage of unconsciousness where I was like really in a naive unconsciousness default mechanism where I was thinking stuff was being done to me. Yeah. Now, it took me some time to reconnect, and luckily meditation for me was the key to that. That's what opened that doorway, is to discover that my certainty wasn't on the outside, it was on the inside. And as I learned to meditate, discipline myself in that beginning, had to put a lot of effort in at the beginning. It wasn't easy because I would resist doing the meditation, because I knew it was revealing myself as a deliberate creator. That's what was being revealed. It's like the more I could see, the more responsible I became. The more I could see, the more I realized that I was participating in the reality of my experience. And gradually, I started to slowly accept who and what I am. And it kept getting shown to me like, yeah, you said at the beginning it was progressive. Mostly it was progressive with occasional radical moments of earth-shattering, breakdown. So it was a mixture of different. It wasn't one moment of awakening. I think it's another thing. It's like several mini moments, big, huge moments. They can come when you least expect them. But yeah, in this moment, I'm talking about progressivity. And I think it was the universe's way of being a bit kind to me and recognizing, playing a game with me, noticing how attached I was to the familiar. It's like I was a bit of an egg that it couldn't crack. Yeah, a bit stubborn, a bit overly intellectual, a bit fixed, a bit rigid. And it did take quite strong processes, like getting hit with lightning or going off to the Amazon jungle, or intense processes. That was my way, because I was quite numb in my body. Yeah, and this, I don't know if this is male or female, but I'll own it as my experience. There was a disembodiment for me. I somehow thought the world was something we interpret through the mind. So I noticed I was living for a whole series of ideas that I wanted to accomplish or achieve, not present feelings. And some people say this is a masculine tendency. We produce a vision of the world, an idea of the world, and we live for the idea, the religion, the philosophy, the politics, but we're not living in the body. Yeah. If the idea could be translated into the body, it would live as wisdom, not as knowledge. And I learned that later. But there was definitely a stage where I was living in the world of ideas, chasing ideas, looking for fulfillment over there. And what that was causing in my system was stress, agitation, discontent, all these things. And when I started to slow down into meditation, to breath, to feeling, to presence, I noticed that became more interesting for me, because it was more kinesthetic, it was more absorbing and more entertaining actually than any idea. The ideas felt empty in comparison with like breathing and feeling prana move through my system. Yeah, or someone touching my hand and feeling the contact, or deeply listening, or making a picture, or just going for a walk, just kinesthetically grounding. And I wasn't grounding before that because I was afraid of grounding, because I knew that if I grounded, I'd have to feel what was in my body. I'm not going to get into it right now, but I had some traumatic events in childhood where I leaped out of my body, and it took me several years to decide on my terms and my timing when to come back in. But I had a whole period of numbness where I didn't feel my own existence. I thought my existence. And so this is why I feel that the universe, in my view, is incredibly tender and compassionate and tailored to each person. And what I needed was a very gentle, progressive opening to build trust, to build safety, to build openings, and to gradually start to fill up my body with feelings again. So I found dance. My way was through conscious movement. I love to dance, to move, to breathe, and connect that way. And it was a real no mind space. I could drop right in to sensation. And it took a while to repattern, to repathway, to open up and trust and allow. But as I did, I started to feel more feeling flood through my body. More emotion, more sensation, more presence, more energy. And that became my center of aliveness. And of course, I still have thoughts now, but I now activate the thought with the feeling. So it's like the heart is moving through the mind as opposed to the mind moving by itself. The heart is moving through the body instead of emotion just kicking off by itself. So I'm in my movement. I'm in my experience as it's happening. but it was quite a slow, progressive journey. But the reason I'm describing this to you, to us, to anyone who's listening here, is there is no one size fits all in awakening. There's no map. There's one map. There's no one methodology. There's your experience. And what I've noticed as I listen to other people who go through their own expressions of this is that it's so detailed to you. It's built into your nervous system. It's built into your perception. It's built into your emotional body and your thought structures. It's going to meet you in the way that you can meet it. And to trust that, I didn't know this when it was happening. I know this now looking back, how perfect it was. I wanted that tender touch, that gentle opening, that holding and building of trust. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to share.
But it is so fascinating to hear the different sides of awakening for people. Mine was complete opposite, because that's what I needed to finally listen. And I'm also kind of a hard egg to crack, I guess. But I'd pushed it off so long, and the experience that I had, the very first one that caused that awakening, that connection I had made, I had 3 days before that asked for it verbally without realizing I was asking for it, through a conversation with a friend. I said, I want to experience this. I want this to happen. And so everything changed, so I can finally ditch this habit. And it was funny. I was just rattling off these things kind of, over wine with the gal one night. And then all of a sudden this experience happened, and it was pretty much what I asked for, even though I was cursing it at the time. But yeah, I had no idea for a long time that was playing out perfectly for me. It was the exact path that my soul chose. And again, back to, those listening, just get to a place of acceptance with it. Acceptance is going to be the ability to surrender and let go and accept are going to be the greatest tools that you can rely on in this awakening journey, in my opinion. It's what's helped me the most, and that helps me tremendously in everything, like all of my relationships and my experiences in life, to just not hold on to any one way it has to be or that I expect it to be, but just let it happen and enjoy what comes, good or bad. Know that there's a purpose in that. And again, that's how you really, I think, come into your gift in sharing. If you don't experience those challenging times, but what's really bringing you back to share that, like the pain is what the best songs are usually written from heartbreak. And, everybody expresses things, these pieces of artwork, through pain. So, another thing I learned through that process was to use the pain, make the pain worth it, when you're ready to, that's when I've been personally the most inspired to sit down and write. And when I have written, I'm not a big writer, and I always wanted to be, but I know it's in me, and I just never done it. It was like I was expecting myself to be bad at it, and I didn't want to be vulnerable to put it out there to people. And one day I sat down, and I was feeling this immense amount of pain in my body, and I had the wherewithal at that point to know it was not just being caused by the experience that I was going through, but it felt like years of pain. And that was the first time that clicked, which was another awakening moment for me. But it felt like years of women's pain, like from my ancestors, that I was never able to connect with. Like I've never felt connected and close with the women in my family. And it was that moment I sat down on my laptop and I wrote for 4 hours. I probably cried through a whole box of tissues, but it came out beautifully. And when I read back on it, I was like, where was that coming from? Like, who was that wrote that? And this voice was like, that's what's inside of you when you, and thankfully I don't have to be in pain to share it in that way anymore. But it took those painful experiences for me to really dive into that depth inside of me, like just kind of give up. It's like, I don't care what anybody thinks anymore. I don't care what this looks like. I'm feeling so much. I have to get it out of me. And whether that's dance, whatever else, creating music, writing, it's just a lot of beauty can come from those experiences, that dark night of the soul.
As you're speaking there, I just had this sentence which says, resistance is futile. Yeah. So, and then which complements that is awakening inevitable.
You guys are all going to experience it.
So this says resistance is futile and awakening is inevitable. It's like, and we're saying it's like it's not the new normal, it's the ancient normal, it's the always normal. we're a spiritual being having a human experience, and this is along the way to integrate the horizontal and the vertical, self-development, self-awakening. This is a natural process. And, we're starting a conversation here. We're not starting, we're adding to a conversation that's been in existence for millennia. But maybe we're just reinvigorating the conversation, especially at this moment in time where I sense in the collective field there's like the carpet is being pulled away culturally. Like there's a sensation of like we can't attach to our roles, our familiar, what we call ordinary. And so I can imagine there's a disorientation with a lot of people. Loss of job, loss of money, loss of status, loss of image, loss of action. And this for me, I've taken this last since March and before, taken this as a moment of retreat, deep meditation, to like really deeply connect into who and what am I, what am I living for, what is my purpose of being here. And if it's not about just surviving, not about just making the money or doing some activity 9 to 5, or what is it about? What can I bring into my world which gives more meaning and passion and energy and presence, and where I feel I prefer the word contentment over satisfaction, actually, because contentment feels like a smiling cat, it's just sublimely resting. Satisfaction suggests I've just done something to get satisfied, sexually, or good food, or I've done something to get it. Whereas, like for me, contentment has a feeling of it of already, always. And this, for me personally, is deeper than happiness. I wouldn't seek happiness because sadness is perfect. Ecstasy is perfect. Sorrow is perfect. It's like the whole emotional range is here on purpose for the whole emotional range, not just bits of it. I'm censoring these bits and I'm going to preference these bits. It's like we're designed with a nervous system and an emotional body to express through. And so if I was to make a priority of bliss or happiness or, so-called upper centers liberation process, then I'd be denying the beauty and the perfection of everything else. So I've always felt like I'm putting the puzzle back together, like getting a sense of where is the perfect place for everything. There's nothing here which is by mistake. There's nothing out of place. It's like, it might feel scrambled and disoriented, but now just putting it back together. I don't know if you mentioned on this call or we did in the chat before, but you brought in the image of the phoenix, and I feel this is very relevant, or I'd like to make this relevant in this moment, is to inspire people that death brings life. Life brings death, death brings life. It's circular. It's the seasons changing. It's normal and natural to go through these moments of attachment and release, presence, what's now, what's next, what was, what is, this movement and change. Maybe the pain we feel in our lives becomes suffering because we attach to it, because we keep telling the story of it. Even joy, as we attach to it, becomes the story of it. It loses the joy. As we return to the childhood states, the childhood innocence, we start to recognize that what makes that beautiful and wonderful is the non-attachment. The child is happy, they're sad, they're playing, they're in a castle, they're fighting a dragon, they're swimming. It's like it's movement to movement to movement to movement. And somewhere along the way, we slowed that down and condensed that and contracted that and made that into can't be so fluid, can't be so spontaneous, can't be so imaginative, can't be playful, better get serious and grow up and, get fixed. Right? Now, hopefully, and I wish this in a good way, hopefully the shattering that we're all going through right now, the carpet pulling away, the disorientation, takes us back to our innocence, takes us back to a deeper state of what's already here. And we can discover what's underneath the buried attachments, which is the beauty of the human being, the beauty of the heart, the revelation of life. And I'm not saying this as a promise, as a heavenly thing, as some spiritual bypass. I'm saying this as somebody who's been on the journey of breakdown, catastrophe, disaster, trauma, been through that dark night of the soul, accepted it, met the challenge, passed through, come through the other side, and discovered a deeper sense of essence that was always here, waiting to happen. And it's just got more and more appealing for me. It's more and more appealing to be present and content than it is to chase something over there, which I know I'm never going to get to. It's a horizon out of reach all the time. And so my expressions that I have, my goals, they're on the horizontal line. Goals still happen. But contentment is happening all the way. on the vertical line. Yeah. At the same time as I feed, I go shopping, I cook, I create a new course, I do different things. Now, of course, I'm still moving and changing, but the one who is moving and changing is steady, is content, is awake, is realized, because the awakening process brings us awake. We wake up as we are. And that's what I really meant when I was talking about the glamour, is it can sidetrack us. Yeah? To ask the deeper question, why the awakening? Why the awakening? It's to peel away the layers. It's to peel away the contractions and the attachments, to reveal, the natural innocence that we've all come in with. Like to get back to our original blueprint, our original design. And I've seen this, not with myself, with you. I've seen this with thousands of people. As you unpeel yourself and reveal yourself, what emerges is just beauty, heart, presence, aliveness.
Yeah. And there's so much beauty when you see that switch in someone. I see that realization. It's like, it's something we're fighting. We're so scared of like what we look like and what people are going to think about what we do. And like, the pre-awakening side of us is just, it's almost like in this people pleaser cycle in a way. We kind of live how we feel like we're supposed to live.
Yeah.
And then when that awakening occurs and someone just has that sense of freedom, it's just the most beautiful thing to witness. And that's one of my favorite parts of being on this side and having these conversations and doing working with people in the capacity that I do in that healing space, is seeing that switch and seeing them accept who they are right now and this deeper layer of themselves that they just had no idea or didn't have any faith in. They thought they had to do something to get it, to acquire it. It's like, no, it's right here. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Because in my life, you don't regret any of the ups and downs.
It's the undoing of us, isn't it? It's the undoing of the idea of us, and recognizing the construct of the idea that we think we are. As I say, I like to look at ego perspective often, and just to gather the context of all of this and see what this might mean collectively. So at one level, there's a thing called consensual reality. Yeah? So, one person has a vision, shares it with two, they share it with 10, and suddenly everyone starts to agree the sky is yellow, okay? And the sky's still blue, but everyone's in the yellow sky party, yeah? And then 100 people believe it, and before you know, you have a religion of yellow sky believers, yeah? Now, this is consensual reality, consensus by the majority of opinions that all believe a certain thing is true. And so there it becomes relatively true based on that agreed upon belief, yeah? Now, perhaps this cracking open, this devastation, this carnage that's being brought upon the earth at the moment of disorientation is an opportunity to challenge that consensual reality that we've been living in, that, time is money, 9 to 5, get my 3 weeks off, and, that's what my life's about. Yeah? Or politicians have power over me, or, that this is what's going on, that this is the reality. Maybe none of that is true. Maybe that was just an agreed upon belief that we've been brought into in this kind of slavery, mechanistic, determinist reality that we've bought into, or we've been indoctrinated into, or conditioned into. And now in the chaos, like you say, when the mud is swelled up in the still lake, and I actually quite like that moment, to be honest. Like knowing that there's a pearl in there, but it's all swelled up from it. In the swirling up, everyone's disoriented. All the people who've been holding these kind of attached power positions, they're also disoriented. Yeah, there's a moment of non-attachment, like you've detached. But whether it's a revolution or evolution or some kind of protest or something's cracked through the mainstream in such a way that we start to see through the cracks. There's a glitch in the system. You start to see through the cracks into what I call the creative heart tricks. For me, the matrix is the superimposed reality. And underneath that, as that cracks open, the creative heart trick emerges. It's always been here. And it's us as deliberate, powerful creators. Each one of us, not a few of us, all of us. It's what we're made of. It's what we're designed to be. It's what we are. So there's this sensation in the cracking open, in this conversation, in many conversations like this happening, and I've seen many on YouTube and other places at this moment. This is becoming a topic. What is life about right now? What is postmodernism? What is post-corona world going to look like? Well, let's not wait for the future to happen. Let's design it. Let's be part of the future that we want to live into. And my thing that I'm putting forward here is, let's go to the essence of who we really are. It's not about redefining, it's rediscovering the essence of the human being. Rediscovering human kindness, humankind, human being, that we are souls incarnate in bodies. We have this wonderful functioning evolutionary system that we have been gifted with to express through. And just like cleaning up the distortions, cleaning up the attachments, cleaning up all the false beliefs that we've anchored into or been conditioned into, and to like reset the system, recalibrate, whatever you want to call it, revivify, but like start fresh from a perspective. If awakening has something to say, if this mirror Sao, this visionary state has something to communicate, it's be yourself, be free, be true. Don't be attached, don't be conditioned, don't get caught up in belief or the phenomena or the drama or the exterior drama or the internal phenomena drama. Go to the essence, and know yourself. Man, woman, know thyself, and you will know the world. That was what was on the ancient mystery entrance as you walk through the portal. Yeah? So for me, this is beginning a new conversation. It's starting a new consensual reality where we come to an agreement of the nature of reality, which is deeper than the very thin crust of I'm a personality who just lives in the matrix machine. That I'm in fact this magnificent creatress being with all the potential, all the possibility, all the energy. As we start to see this in each other, and I know that we're seeing this, this is partly why we're doing this podcast. We've had some sessions before, connections before, shared our gifts before, and in this kind of like mutual empowerment space that we're holding, what would it be like if a world was like this? We're holding the space for each other to be fully empowered in their gift, their way, their wisdom, their wonder, their talents, their genius. So hopefully, as you're listening to this, more than hopefully, it's like a deep intentional prayer that you join into this new conversation about the nature of awakening, combined with growth, combined with the hero's journey, combined with this integration, and discover new ground in your being, new meaning, new passion, new energy, new focus.
It's amazing. I feel even more inspired now. Beautiful conversation. So, I welcome it.
Maybe we, I haven't been watching the clock at all, but maybe we can just, if we want to give some like key points just to close with, and maybe we can close with a short meditation. Maybe you'd like to guide that or something. But maybe we can have just a few minutes each, just like, what are we taking away from this? Us personally, what are we inviting people to like explore from this podcast? What do you feel to go first? Would you like me to?
Sure, first. So to close this up, what I really want as the biggest takeaway, what I'm taking away from this as a reminder and something that I've experienced, is to not hang on to the details of the experience, first off, to appreciate these little signs and synchronicities from the universe and these magical, mystical experiences that you inevitably will have if you're open, when you're open to having them, but not to hold on to that and not to compare that, but just to be open to whatever is going to come and know that that is going to be the way that you really sink into this process and to embody this process. And the second thing is to allow that embodiment process to happen, that integration, which takes time and patience. And once you have that realization, or that the curtains pulled back on something you've been experiencing, a pattern or way of life that or way that you've been living your life, don't expect it all to change, but give yourself that time and that process. How does this really affect me on a day-to-day basis? And, how in my next interactions, or, the next time I leave my house, how am I going to experience the world? And make it an active conversation that you have with yourself as you're going through this journey, because that's really how you bring that into the body, and to just experience it, be in your body as you're experiencing it, the highs, the lows. Some days you'll meditate and you'll feel tingles all over and you'll have visions. And the next day you'll go in expecting that and just be still and blank. And that's what you're meant to feel that day. So just really get into a place of peace with that. It's my biggest takeaway and reminder that I still take and need.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And really, thank you everybody for listening to these as well. It's like the courage it takes to also to step into this conversation. So takeaways, what can I say? I don't know if they're takeaways or giveaways. This giving away, taking, receiving, it's all happening. It's all very circular, this feeling for me. Yeah, so we were traveling through this conversation. First of all, just huge thing. I just want to give appreciation. This is the first time we've done this podcast as a vision idea, a little whim, a little inspiration, and we've acted on it. And so just I want to give an appreciation to you, Beka, for stepping in, meeting me meeting you in this space to offer this. And I'm just delighted, that we've stepped in, and I can feel the energy of this conversation. Hope the listeners can feel this. I can feel the benefit. Hope everyone can feel the benefit. And it stimulates something inside of all of us. It stimulates an awakening. One of the biggest giveaways or reminders I'd like to sort of just to summarize is that we have this spiritual instinct, which can also be described as a heart instinct, a love instinct, a life instinct. There's a pull to meaning. There's a pull towards purpose, a reason for being. And I genuinely believe everyone has this. However buried, wherever you are on the relay race, I genuinely believe this is an intrinsically woven part of our soul code DNA. It's impressed into a deep place in us. And it's calling us. It's calling. It's often calling. It's always calling. Yeah? Are we listening? Are we listening? Now, if it's intrinsic, if it's designed, if it's woven into the fabric, then it's there on purpose. And what I've discovered in my life is listening to that call has been the best thing I could ever have done in my life. Listening to the story, I'm not enough, I'll never make it, I'm a sinner, I'm wrong, I'm bad, all the insufficiency, lack stories that so many of us abound into and behave from. It's not just a perception, it's a behavior that comes from that perception. Yeah? Just imagine what it would be like if you could shift into a deeper state of being that doesn't speak like that. That there isn't an inner critic, which is judging, comparing, analyzing, putting yourself down, putting others down, complaining and blaming. Like I shared my story earlier in this podcast, that shift for me of connecting to my own embodied process, my ground, my energy, where it no longer became interesting or even acceptable to blame anyone. Yeah, because the responsibility was in me. I could feel it burning inside of me, and I loved it. Yeah, there was some terror at the beginning. There was some overwhelm at the beginning, yes. But as I integrated into it, grounded into it, I started. This is who I am. I'm designed to be a creator. I'm living my life on purpose. I'm full of gifts and skills and abilities, and I have access on this vertical line to transmit vision into action. So just doesn't hover in this like air mystical space. The purpose is the whole hero's journey. And I think that's the thing, is to give the map that not to get lost or stuck at the beginning, the middle, the end, to see this cyclic moving. You do one hero's journey, then you do another one, and another one, and another one. It's not just the one. Awakening is not a singular event, and it's, as we've touched on here, we could have spoken, and perhaps we will speak about again about different stories, different other examples, get other people, guest speakers on to share their stories and journeys, examples. Starting to recognize this relativity of awakening process. But what's underneath it and what's through it is it's a calling. This is my biggest view. It's a calling to reconnect to our authenticity, to come home to naturalness, to where we are already content, and to remain in that, to rest in that, not be attached to it, just rest in your natural state of being. And then, as I expressed earlier, the tree of life happens all by itself. When I choose to do something, to create a course, to give a coaching session, the ability is there. It's like, it's there. The branch is already there. I've done some growth work to cultivate the skill base, but it comes online at the moment I need it. And I've trusted in that inside out process. There's such a detail in the wisdom and the perfection in the universe. So I'm a student of this perfection, a student of beauty. I love this. Some people call it bhakti or devotion, this in awe. Like my inner child is awake and alive and magic. And I'm so happy and present that I have the eyes to see like this. If I measure myself back through the timeline, just as I can see where I was stuck, where I was repressed, where I was contracted, where I was alone and suffering, victimized. The world was, I know those years of misery, and I can, without judging myself, then I can also see that I was partly responsible for creating most of that. And I've forgiven myself, I released myself, and now I'm living in a very, very different dynamic, which is source-based, it's abundance-based, it's connected to the originating forces of the universe, it's reality-based. And I've allowed myself to free fall through the cracks. Free fall gladly. Now, at first it was shocking, it was terrifying, and now I gladly surrender because I know what's here. And I think that's what would have been useful to know about from a master, a teacher, a friend, an ally, or a guide, is that what you're going through right now, as your world is falling apart, is part of a big initiation process of deeply connecting to your authenticity. And I'm here to be with you on that journey. I will support you. I'll reflect with you. I'll stand with you. I'll guide you. And this is a natural, inevitable part of our growth, development, awakening, expression. Yeah, quite a few takeaways, giveaways. I feel really inspired in this meeting.
So do I.
It's like, I see things I didn't see before, and it just reminds me of the absolute value of sharing. Starting in an evolutionary awakening conversation is like just to step in there. You may or may not know this. At the beginning of this call, we were hesitating what we're going to do, what we're going to say, how we're going to do it. Feeling some anticipation, some nerves, or I was at least. And and actually just jumping in. This way of holding the podcast is also a demonstration of how this leaping into faith works. You dare to swim in the river, to get in, to get onto the field and play the game. And then you just know what to do. It just comes. And, we could carry on talking for much, much longer, but I feel we should probably wrap up for now. But I feel the river. Yeah.
I had this, as you were giving your giveaways, I had this image of a mirror ball and how, when you look at it like a dance floor and there's this ball up there of mirror that's been shattered hundreds of times, thousands of times. It's not some perfectly circular mirror. And it's that way by design, because when you look around, the way the light reflects it, depending on where it is and where the light is, it's casting these beautiful designs and visuals all over the floor and the walls. It just surrounds it, but it's not the whole time. It's like as it passes a certain light. So I kind of see that journey. That's what we're doing. We have to be broken into these little pieces and then put ourselves back together, but not in the way that's like this cookie cutter perfect way, or what we think is perfect. It's like, let it just come back together, let it fall apart and come back together naturally. And you will see the most unique shine and design from that. So yeah, I could also go on forever, but I think into the heart space and into that true essence of ourselves. So yeah, everybody just take a deep breath where you are and get comfortable if you're not already. And just start to feel into your body. Feeling the air enter your nostrils on your inhales. Each exhale, relaxing the muscles within the body. Noticing where any tension may be held or the breath doesn't seem to flow easily. But just notice, without judgment, any sensation and feeling that's coming up right now. We talked about so much tonight that can spark so many feelings within us. And just acknowledging those feelings is key to this journey, to our development, our awakening. And just notice the heaviness in your body as you take another deep breath in and exhale out. And then take your awareness to your heart space, to your chest. Notice the rise and fall with your breath. And imagine a green light glowing within that heart space, right inside your chest, around your heart. You inhale, that light expands. Exhale, relax. And then from that eagle point of view, to zoom out and see yourself in your space right now, wherever you are. See that light, that green glow in your chest start to expand out of your body, using tingles, any sensations with it. Expand so large that it fills up the room that you're in. Breathing into that expansion, that love, energy from your heart. As you deepen your breath, it gets bigger. It starts to fill the whole entire house or building that you're in. And then it starts to seep out into your city or your town. And you see from above this light start to cover the entire country that you're in. And it starts to expand out over the oceans, expands out to Guy and to me, everyone else listening, present, future. Allow that light to connect to the hearts of everyone else. And as you see that connection take place, you see the entire world glowing green, unconditional love, the space to be ourselves, to listen to our heart, to speak from that place, move from that place. And for this moment, just see the love, that connection, brothers and sisters, putting differences aside, our ideas in the mind of what it should be aside, and just connecting directly to the hearts of humanity. Take a deep breath in, big exhale out. So you expand that love just a little bigger. And on your next inhale in, receive that love. Receive the ebb and flow. Remembering that it's not just giving, about receiving equally. And take one more big breath in. This time, hold your breath at the top. Fill up as big as you can through your chest, your stomach, your shoulders. And then slowly exhale it out, grounding yourself back to this room, back to your space, back to your body. And just placing a hand on the heart to close this meditation. The light in me sees and honors the light in each and every one of you. With so much love and appreciation for this time together, this space, Guy, and for everyone tuning in. It's such a beautiful place to be. So grateful. Namaste.
Thank you very much, Becca. That's absolutely wonderful. Delicious, embodied, grounded, weaving all the threads together. So I just want to say a big thank you to everybody for listening, for being with us in this first podcast of ours. If you like, love, enjoy this, then please support us. And we're going to invite you to subscribe to this YouTube channel and to click the notifications and share the link with your friends so we can build this together. So that this can be a place, an oasis sanctuary, a place for wisdom, for sharing, for deep listening, for opening. So we'll have some conversations, Becca and I, and other times we're going to individually invite different guests on, but they'll all be inspirational and applicable, how to integrate and weave so that you can directly apply this into all aspects of your everyday life. So thank you very, very much for watching, and wishing you a great day, evening, night, wherever you are in the world. Bye-bye for now.
See you soon.